we had a big win for democracy last week when the midterms happened, and this is a welcome reprieve, but that's all. And yes, the Republican fascists have suffered a major setback, but don't let anyone fool you that the struggle is over because it's far from over. Like so many Americans, we were deeply stressed out and full of anxiety leading up to Tuesday's midterms. Instead of the much discussed red wave or red tsunami that we conjured up images of horses in a burning barn, bewildered and running in panic circles, unable to escape their doom. Now, that was not the fate that awaited the American people. Just enough Americans had the good sense and genuine patriotism to reject Trump and the Republican Party and stave off a full-on disaster for now. It still appears likely at this writing that the Republicans will win a slim majority in the House, and that is not certain, but in either direction it will be one of the narrowest majorities in congressional history. Perhaps the narrowest since 1930, when Republicans won a 216 majority. After their late wins in Arizona and Nevada, Democrats will hold at least their current de facto majority in the U.S. Senate, and they may win an outright majority of 51 if Senator Raphael Warnock defeats Republican challenger and buffoon Herschel Walker in the Georgia runoff election next month. Now, there's plenty of other good news. Governor Gretchen Whitmer had won her re-election in the key battleground state of Michigan, as did Governor Tony Evers in Wisconsin. The Democrats won control of both houses of the state legislature in Michigan and Minnesota, while a number of other legislators remain undecided. Now, all the major election denier candidates for Secretary of State positions were defeated, although we can expect some to protest that they were cheated out, which they weren't. In a positive sign for the future of American democracy and society, voters that were under 30 years old, especially black and Latino voters, had overwhelmingly sided with the Democrats here. And in the initiatives across the country, voters chose to protect women's reproductive rights and freedoms on the state level virtually across the board, and to enact other progressive legislation as well. Now, in a series of emails, the Defend Democracy Project summarized the results of the 2022 midterms by saying that voters have rejected Trump and his sycophants' criminal conspiracy to overthrow the will of the people. Across the country, democracy won and maggot election deniers were defeated. Overall, Americans rejected the maggot ideology's threat to our basic freedoms. Now, Donald Trump and his hundreds of sycophantic inbreds head to Congress to continue to pose a very serious threat to our hard-won freedoms. Now, it's understandable that many Democrat commentators feel immense relief, but it's a mistake to view these midterm elections as a great victory for the Democratic Party and by extension democracy itself. Now, this outcome, it was unexpected by most observers, and it offers only a brief reprieve, and what will likely be a decades-long fight against American neo-fascism. Now, Democrats defied the historic trends, conventional wisdom, and the predictions of the Church of the Savvy and larger pundit class. And that in itself is remarkable, but we still need to face the fact that in some ways the Democrats just got lucky. It appears likely, and although not certain, that the Republicans won the overall popular vote in Tuesday's election, and technically there's nothing popular about the Republicans. In a reversal of recent trends, they wasted votes in places like Florida and Texas where they won by large margins, while losing numerous close races in battleground states. Now, this phenomenon is related to the geographic sorting of voters in recent years, and it has more often been a problem for Democrats who run up to huge margins in large cities and the coastal states, but often lose elsewhere. Now, polling and other data suggests that the Democrats were saved by millions of voters who were upset about inflation and disappointed in both President Biden and the overall direction of the country, but they were more disgusted and afraid of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, and the danger that the Republican Party and Donald Trump pose. And lucky, but it's luck, but by its very nature, but it's not something that can be preordained or controlled, and it's not a repeatable strategy when it comes to defeating the Republican fascists over the long term. But ultimately, we did better than expected, but it's still not a winning strategy. Now, the Democrats must, now, if the Democrats want to win and they want to maintain voters, they have to improve on their messaging. and they have to improve on their brand identity and and they have to unapologetically, sorry, unapologetically, sorry, tongue-tied, and they have to embrace a more progressive social democratic agenda. Now, public opinion polling shows that, contrary to the broken conventional wisdom, America is not a center-right country. They must be willing to put forward a bold vision with specific proposals to improve the lives of the American people, and they must be willing to attack Republicans with the truth and point out that the Republican Party, with or without Trump, stands for values and policies that will cause great pain and damage to the vast majority of Americans, whatever their skin color and wherever the fuck they live at. Despite the immense relief around the 2022 results, America's political culture nonetheless remains deeply ill. Whatever befalls upon Donald Trump amid the interim Republican squabbling, in the medium term, Trumpism and the Republican fascist movement will not be deterred by the results of the midterms. They will retreat and reconsider, and then renew their attacks, continuing to gnaw at the vulnerable spots in America's political and social institutions, with the eventual goal of overthrowing democracy. Despite the many Democratic victories across the country, more than 200 Republican supporters of the Big Lie were elected to public office, and despite the egregious and literally criminal record of the Trump regime and the Republican Party through the COVID pandemic and the Klan attack on January 6th, the reversal of Roe v. Wade, and numerous other misdeeds, both large and small, Republican candidates remained highly competitive across the country and winning many key races on the state, local, and federal level. In a reasonable society, the Republican Party would have been utterly vanquished or driven to the political margins, but instead it retains its cult-like hold on tens of millions of white Americans. The midterms represented a welcome setback for their movement, but it has not altered that fundamental fact. Throughout the age of Trump and beyond, the mainstream American news media has largely failed in its responsibility to bring clarity to complex events and hold the powerful to account. The midterms were no exception to that pattern. Many mainstream media pundits responded to the midterm results by pronouncing that democracy won. But what sense can we make of that after many millions of voters supported the Big Lie and election-denying candidates in the face of their obvious mendacity? Now, if the Republicans end up in control of the House, even with a majority of only a few votes, their caucus will be overwhelmingly controlled by ardent Trump sycophants and aspiring fascists. Their attacks on democracy will not stop, and to suggest that anything meaningful has been won is irresponsible. Even the barest of Republican majorities will be able to obstruct any and all Democratic legislation. Perhaps to focus a government shutdown over the debt ceiling, or actually to force basically one. It will launch an endless kangaroo court hearing into Joe Biden's son, his cabinet members, and ultimately himself, who may well face impeachment proceedings rooted almost entirely in Donald Trump's lust for revenge. Republicans will also do everything they can to destroy the American economy if they believe it will damage Biden and the Democrats leading into the 2024 election. The congressional investigation of the Trump's cabal crimes on January 6th and beyond will end immediately. Social Security will be targeted, stealthily or otherwise, as part of a larger plan to further degrade or destroy what remains of the social safety net. As voting rights and other experts have pointed out, many of the races that Republicans won in these midterms were the result of gerrymandering and other voter suppression and other nullification techniques. They will owe their majority to those tactics, thanks largely to redistricting in Florida and New York, and they will surely seek to expand such efforts to avoid the kinds of electoral losses that they suffered on Tuesday. Now, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida was reelected by a massive margin due to the fact that the district he won in was gerrymandered, and confirming that his formerly purple state is now under solid control of Republicans. DeSantis rejected the federal oversight of the midterm elections in his state, and the apparent violation of civil rights and voting rights laws. He appears to be modeling a 21st century Jim Crow-style racial authoritarian state, which included his own re-election security police and poses of right-wing street thugs, which is sure to be emulated by other Republicans across the country to restrict voting by black and brown people. As America becomes more racially diverse and as the younger generations enter the voting population, Republicans understand that voter suppression and outright vote nullification may be the only way that they can win elections. Early exit polls suggest that the Republican Party may have expanded its support during the midterms among white voters, but more data on this and other questions may take some time. As as author and activist Don Wenzel had wrote on Twitter, victory is not defined by how wrong the political experts are. That is not the bar, ever. Victory is defined by winning and holding the House, period. If the Republicans win the House, they get subpoena power, and they will unleash hell on America for 2 straight years. And if they get that subpoena power, no one will give a flying fuck that the political experts overestimated the Republicans win by the X percentage. It does not matter if the Republicans win the House by 1 seat or 20. Either way, they take power. Pelosi is out, McCarthy is in, and they get subpoena power. They do 20 Benghazi-like hearings, they impeach Biden for nothing, and they wreak havoc. Now, the author and journalist Jeff Charlotte has shared a similar perspective. Oh, it's looking like it might not be as bad as feared. But now I have to stop worrying about Democratic Party and much of media going back to believing the institutions are holding and giving fascism another 2 years to keep growing. In an essay at Vox, Zach Beauchamp offered these insights about the midterms and what they may or may not mean for America's democracy crisis. Despite promising signs, it's far too early for small Democrats to declare victory. We don't have many data points, but one take is that short-term anti-democratic forces in the U.S. are on the decline. A mistake would be to pivot toward the take that those who spoke out against anti-democratic forces were alarmists, writes Ryan Enos, who's a political scientist at Harvard. There's still plenty of evidence that the American public doesn't care enough about democracy, and David Shore, a leading Democrat poll analysis, is skeptical that the issue made much of a difference in 2022, basically telling me that basically no ads were about democracy, and those that voters saw tested pretty poorly. But that being said, Shore thinks that the Democratic messaging about democracy may have affected the outcome indirectly by driving up the party's fundraising numbers. Despite the setback that his endorsees saw in the midterms, Donald Trump is still the leading figure in the Republican Party, commanding the support of a majority of the party faithful and crushing all opponents in 2024 polling. Now, when you combine Trump's chokehold on the GOP with the party's pre-existing anti-democratic drift, it's clear that American democracy is still facing an existential threat from within, and one that has not been cowed by electoral defeat in the past. Based on the information that's in front of us right now, it's fair to let a little bit of cautious optimism color our thinking. In 2022, voters were presented with at least a dozen opportunities to elevate some of the most extreme anti-democratic voices in the world to positions of power over the U.S. elections in key states, and on the whole, they opted to step back from that brink. As Beauchamp says, Americans who voted against the Republican fascists should feel better this week, if only briefly. Now they have to embrace themselves for the bizarre and upsetting shift in national mood that came this Tuesday when Donald Trump apparently and finally announced that he would run for squatter again in 2024. And there is no harm in celebrating the reprieve offered by the 2022 midterms and enjoying the afterglow, but we can't afford to forget that the reality of American neo-fascism is still with us, and it will be with us for a while. Now, so if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.